This week we did see a Jaden Ivey report. I do actually have the video, and we can play it on the screen for people that are watching live right now on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, wherever you are watching. So this is the clip that
mentioned the Pistons being interested in Jose Alvarado. We've reported previously how around the league, the Pistons are believed to be open to moving Jaden Ivey this season. And he's going to be a free agent in the offseason. I believe it's restricted free agency. And if there is a big move to present itself, the Pistons would be open to moving Ivey. Well, Herb Jones would be quite the statement, Tomer. If they went out and they got Herb Jones from New Orleans, integrated him next to Cade Cunningham, next to Ron Holland, who's another up-and-coming player for them, Asar Thompson on the wing. They still get to keep their veterans in Tobias Harris, Karis LeVert. It's a move that would not break the bank. They could give up a draft pick or two and still be in good position to build with their young core, and he fits their timeline perfectly. Obviously, Langdon in the front office in Detroit has that relationship dating back to his days in New Orleans. And so I think that that's something that we have to keep a very close eye on. If Herb Jones is to be moved, I would even go out on a limb and say that the Pistons would be the number one spot to get him. And
So there's a lot to kind of, there we go. Like, I'm not an amateur trying to technical direct. Like, I got rid of you completely out of the frame. Sorry about that. But
hey, you want the spotlight. It's okay. I understand.
Oh yeah, you caught me.
Yeah.
I did kind of want to get into that report from Brett Siegel from Clutch Points, who is a reliable reporter, does a lot of great work over there. What do you think when you hear stuff like that the Pistons are open to moving Jaden Ivey if a right deal does present itself?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily surprising, right? Like, I think if you just look at where things have just kind of naturally developed over the course of the past few months, it just seems like ever since Jaden Ivey has come back, whether fair or not, it hasn't necessarily been smooth sailing thus far this season. There's been spots, obviously, where Ivey's looks pretty comfortable. And, when it comes to like the 3-point shot, that's obviously not a concern. He's getting close to, shooting 40% from three again, which is something that, was kind of a concern coming in, to his career. But, ever since the injury, it just seems like that burst hasn't quite come back, to form, which that's somewhat to be expected. But the question is always, okay, well, if your athleticism isn't there, what else are you bringing to the table? Guys like Derrick Rose were able to prolong his career because his burst wasn't necessarily the same, but he still had the basketball IQ. He was still really crafty. He was still able to find ways to score, in multiple areas of the court. Whereas with like an Ivey, he was already not a great finisher at the rim. Now his ability to get to the rim is almost non-existent. Some of his shot selection, I haven't been in love with this season. It just seems like at times he's kind of trying to force his way into the action to kind of build that confidence. And there's the physical recovery from an injury, and then there's the mental one. And I just think that's been something that's been really difficult for him to, navigate. And also I think it's difficult for JB and his staff to navigate, because on one hand, you recognize that Jaden Ivey is someone that if he does get back to the potential that we've seen in years past, he is someone that does take this team to another level. He is someone that does, change the equation of what this Pistons team is and how they play. It just hasn't happened. And when you talk about someone like Danis Jenkins, where, they're going to have to make a decision here pretty soon about his contract situation, where, you're getting comparable, if not arguably better production on a consistent basis, at least for what you need him to do. And more than likely, you're going to be signing him to a fraction of what Ivey would have commanded this summer, before all the injury stuff. I just think that's something that the Pistons have to consider. And if you're from the Ivey standpoint, like, he's someone that does need that ability to play through mistakes and play more freely when you are talking about coming back from that type of injury. And when you're just talking about the stop and go development that he's had up to this point. I think, again, not a lot of this, not necessarily even his fault with the way that the Monty Williams situation went, where, the way that he was treated that season wasn't entirely consistent. And yeah, last year it seemed like he was starting to overcome that. But, again, things can change on a flip of a dime. And, unfortunately we saw that after Ivey went down with the Cole Anthony play. And so am I surprised? No. I think you've seen even though like and to be clear, like when I point out the body language stuff, this isn't even me like saying like, oh, look at how bad Ivy's behaving. It's just, man, look at how dejected Ivy looks. So look at how much of a mental battle this has really become. And so sometimes things just become abundantly clear that a breakup is coming, and it's not always what both sides want, but it might be what both sides recognize as what's best. And so hearing New Orleans is not surprising at all, because if you know anything about Troy Weaver, is he likes to take second chances on his guys. And that's a common thing throughout all of basketball. But I mean, there's literally, examples of it on that roster in Sadiq Bey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that definitely wouldn't be surprising. I also think Brooklyn wouldn't be a bad spot, just because I really like Jordy Fernandez and I like the culture that they have there. But I think if there's just anything that's abundantly clear, is Ivy's future is more than likely not in a Detroit uniform, especially if he's going to become the player that we all think he can. And, that sucks, because I think you and I both, like, you can go back, and see streams of us watching Ivy's summer league games together, like that was like some of our first collaborations we've done. Like we had a lot of confidence in what this guy could be. And I still think that there's a very, like high upside to what he can be. The problem is it's just upside and like tangible, like progress and production are just two completely different things.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you can unpack. Like if you just kind of want to like push aside the Herb Jones report, okay, I can understand that. I mean, the Trajan came from New Orleans. You have a lot of people on the coaching staff, and Fred Vincent, who's from New Orleans. Michael Blackstone is from New Orleans in the front office. I think as it does kind of pertain to Ivy, I've kind of been under the mindset of he didn't get an extension. Neither him and Duran did, which I think that's completely fair by Trajan Langdon. He wants to see more data, and he should. Didn't draft those guys. I understand that. But I think Ivy's in a very tough situation, and he touched on it. He needs to be able to play through his mistakes. And right now, JB Bickerstaff is not allowing him to play through his mistakes because he has a very deep bench and a very deep rotation. Right now, Ivy's just kind of competing with Danish Jenkins, Marcus Sasser. And it's kind of just like Danis has been so good, kind of facilitating, being that point guard. And Ivy is shooting the ball a lot more this season. I honestly think, Sean, he's just not 100% right. Like, from a health standpoint, you can see it when you watch games. Like, he has a very difficult time getting by defenders. He's improved a little bit past couple of games of blowing by his defender, but you can honestly see it's just not there. And I don't really expect it to be there after breaking a leg, breaking your fibula, and then having arthroscopic knee surgery. It might take him a full season just to kind of get back into the swing of things. And, are the Pistons really going to take that patient approach and just let him, hit restricted free agency and, see if a team does try to go after him and maybe it's a sign and trade situation? I'm not entirely sure. I think it sucks because he's had so much ups and downs throughout his young NBA career. Rookie season, him and Cade played 12 games together. Cade has to have season-ending surgery. His sophomore season, he gets the Monty Williams experience where Killian Hayes starts for 40-plus games. Last year, was playing great. 30 games, gets his leg snaps, was having a career high across the boards in terms of three-point shooting, putting the ball on the floor. There were some games where he had some really good defensive outings. And this season, it's just kind of been like an uphill battle where he's still relying on the shot right now, just because he's still recovering from that broken leg, which I completely understand. But I think it gets to a point where, like, when you talk about contract and extensions, I'm sure his camp probably wants to get paid. I'm sure they want a new contract, and it's in Trajan's right to at least, explore. Like, every GM is going to see what the market is for their players. Not saying that Jaden Ivey is going to get dealt this deadline. He could still be on this team past the deadline, and we could be completely wrong and look like jackasses.
Right.
That's why I clip these, so you guys can call me a jackass. That's why I do it.
Yeah, I still think there's something to be said about the concept of, like, seeing what things can look like by the end of the season. Unless, like, I think when you do hear that type of scenario, it's like, okay, if the Pistons are able to go get a Herb Jones, which if we are, like that's a different conversation in my opinion. But I mean, no matter what trade the Pistons make, as we've said kind of from beginning of the year, the centerpiece was almost always going to be Jaden Ivey. Just from a logic standpoint, just from how things have played out, if you were to just look at like a roster construction and then just, oh yeah, by the way, Trajan didn't draft him. So it's like, it all just added up at that point anyway. So is it surprising to hear that the Pistons are open to that? No, because I think in part you can just kind of tell that by how Ivy's been how he's been played in the rotation this year. Like we've heard loud and clear, like one of the things that some people have still been asking is Ivy still on a minutes restriction? No, he's not. Mm-mm. He hasn't been on a minutes restriction for a couple of months now. His minutes at this point are because that's about what he's being trusted with. And I think another thing you can kind of look at is he's not necessarily being trusted to play a whole lot deep into fourth quarters unless the game's already out of hand, which if that's how you're being treated as someone who was a former number 5 overall pick, someone who believes that they can be, like one of the lead ball handlers of their own team, that's just probably telling you that the future might not be together. Sometimes you can just put 2 and 2 together and realize it might equal 4.
I think the one thing that maybe some Pistons fans, I'm not saying they don't pay attention to it. I think some fans pay attention to it more than others is if you want to play for JB Bickerstaff, you have to play on both ends of the floor. And there have been games this year where Ivy does play some pretty solid defense, but more often than not, he will miss assignments. And, that's to be expected. He's coming off a role where, he's more playing off the bench. But I think the reason why he's not getting as much playing time is he's not playing on both ends of the floor. And I think JB, that's like kind of like a I cannot say that word right now.
Prerequisite.
Yeah, there we go. A little tongue twister. If you want to play on a JB Bickerstaff-led team. And there have been games where he just does not play, solid defense. He's not fighting over the top of screens. He kind of looks like he's out of position some nights. Again, like he's coming off a broken leg. I don't really expect him to be 100% healthy going into the season. I didn't expect that. My expectations were actually pretty low. But it doesn't really surprise me that he's not getting a whole lot of burn in second half of games if it's close. And he got some clock today, but it was a blowout against the Kings. So
yeah, it's one of those situations where it just highlights the harsh reality of professional sports, where sometimes things just aren't always fair, and sometimes things just don't go the way that you expect them to go or the way that you necessarily think they should go. Mm-hmm. But it's just the reality of it. Like, I don't think anyone expected when Jaden Ivey went out that this time, that this time next year, or a year ago, essentially, that we'd be talking in 2026 about the Pistons going to the finals, and we're not laughing about it. If anything, people are expecting them to now. So that just changes the calculus of your leash is a lot shorter when you're playing for playoff positioning and home court throughout the entire playoffs. That changes everything.
I agree. I think it's just a situation as we get closer to this February 5th deadline, the Pistons are going to do their due diligence, see what's out there, see if they like the return for him. If they don't, they'll keep him.